IVM.
Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Uncle Please Sit. With me as always is my co-host and buddy Tushar Abhichandani. Tushar, how's it going?
It's going well, and also I'd like to tell everyone that my co-host's name, who is Joel Pereira, he forgot to mention his own name.
Oh, wow. This is a new one.
The tradition continues.
This is a new one. No, but this is a new one. After 20 episodes, this is a new one because we always like whoever's introing the show always fucks up the name of the host, the co-host. But today I got your name right, but I omitted to mention my own.
We have done it. We have we've kept it fresh, Joel. We've kept it fresh.
Yeah. See, under normal circumstances, you'd be like, "No, guys, let's do this again. Let's get this right." We were like, "No, we should plow on because this is what we do." With us, we have a very special guest and fellow podcaster on the IVM network. Hi, Vineet Kanabar.
Hey, man. How you guys doing?
How's it going?
It's going well. I fully relate to fumbling when starting an episode. This morning I was recording one and I got my own show's name wrong.
Yeah, so no. At this point, you should say yes. Yes, Joel, I am a fellow podcaster and I host Storytellers and Storytellers.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah. For a guy who works in podcasting, I'm clearly not taking that cue well. But yeah, I host Storytellers and Storytellers, the podcast about the business of entertainment on the IVM Podcast Network.
Yeah, Vineet is a content guy at Wavemaker, and before that was also head of marketing at TVF, and is basically a whiz in the business of entertainment.
Like that, my mom says so.
Huh?
My mom.
That is all that matters, Vineet.
That is all that matters. At this point, no.
And everything that our mother says is important.
Yeah. At this point, like right now, at least you know. At least your mom does. Your mom know what you do exactly?
She finally got it. Yeah, she did. I think at TVF, she finally got what I did.
Nice. Mine still hasn't figured out.
No, now she listens to like podcasts and stuff. My mom's very tech forward like that. Oh, but there was a time when she was like, I have no idea what the hell you do. And I was like, it'll take a while, but you'll get it eventually.
See, I think depending on output, no, the problem is like even for me, like I worked in television for almost 8 years. And before that was in print and so on and so forth. And my father had no idea what I did till I became an anchor. Okay. And then once I became an anchor, it's like, okay, my son, he's on TV. He's like, he has a show, he talks about cars or whatever, but that's what he does now for a living. And then it went back. Once I stepped off and went back into like producing and, running editorial, again, no clue. My mother, what does your son do? He does one show. It's on some channel. That's about it.
It's symptomatic of how little people understand what goes on behind the scenes and literally behind the scenes, right? This goes on TV.
Vineet was like वो picture बनाता है बस just like what she told people. He's like I don't know what to say, so I'm like just I'll say this.
Vineet, till I started doing a show on television, my father didn't think I had a proper job because I would go to work in like jeans and a t-shirt or chappals or whatever, and he's like, you're obviously not. You obviously, that can't be a job because people don't go to work like this.
On the corporate side of the fence a little bit. So I used to live with my long-term roommate a few years ago. He's a consultant, obviously, and working in media, I would go with like colorful socks, and he would be like, "How can you go to office with socks?" Like, I was like, "How can't you?" Man? But
no. Yeah, we were just talking earlier before we started recording about how we've never had a job where we wore suits to work, or formals.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen either.
I hope that doesn't happen to any of us.
Yeah, also, at least not in Bombay anyway.
Because you also realize that this is a country which is very badly dressed for its weather. If you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if I was living in London or something, I would have then I'd have no problem wearing a suit to work. Yeah, then I'd actually enjoy it.
You'd be all like Burberry trench all the time, bro.
Yeah. Tushar, what are we talking about today?
This is a good segue to go into what are we talking about. Since all of us have a background in entertainment, so we thought, as in media and entertainment, we would be discussing the entertainment industry, primarily television and digital. primarily shows, again in the fiction area. Our goal is to look at television, how television has evolved over the years, how there are certain good things in television, but also a lot of bad things in television that we will also be whining about. We're also going to be talking about how digital is sort of this ray of hope that a lot of us are looking at to sort of drive the quality content revolution that we've all been hoping for years. And we'll also be looking at how digital also has the potential to fall into the same pitfalls that television fell into. So these are the three things we're going to be primarily looking at right after this break, guys. See you soon.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So another really fun week on the network. I don't know if you saw this, but Varun Thakur was on Advertising is Dead. That was a really, really fun episode. Besides that, we've had some great guests all over the place. We had Ram Madhvani on Cyrus Says. We had Saurav Mukherjee, a legend in the finance space. He was on Pesa Vesa. He and Anupam have co-written a book, so definitely do check out that episode and go buy their book too. I mean, like, that would be another great thing to do. Uncle Pleasit had a really, really cool episode with hosts of our other show, Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, Anirudh and Janice. They were talking about celebrity culture and how that's progressed for the last few years. And yeah, it's just been a really, really great week. One episode I do want to shout out. A couple of weeks ago, Pulyabazi did an episode which was just amazing. They were talking about the letters between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore. Do check those out. Those were really good. But with that, let me get you back to your show.
And we are back. Vineet is with us, and we are talking today about Indian television and how it became so terrible, essentially. Vineet, we are relatively older, I think, than a lot of people on the internet. And if we remember, there was actually a time when TV was pretty good, at least when we were kids.
Right.
You know, we had these shows like Bunyad, then Hum Log.
Even with the advent of cable, you had shows like Hip Hip Hooray, or you had a Banegi Apni Baat. I mean, these were not like spectacular, mind-blowing shows. But they were still decent, watchable shows.
Absolutely.
And
good content.
And you put them in context, right? Even because, see, for people like us, I guess we say that these things are bad based on what we are seeing globally, like based on the best. Right. So even if you look at what was on television, say in the US at that time or the UK at that time, I think it would match up, yeah, like those kind of shows.
Oh no, actually, I'll tell you, the 90s in the US is like a really shitty time for TV.
Correct.
I mean, the Bold and the Beautiful and like.
No, that is why we match up.
Oh, is that?
No, although to be fair, like a lot of the content wasn't great, but it was still like lag raha tha ki you made some effort. Like there's something going on there.
Like if you think about it, like when people talk about great TV from the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, globally, okay, I'm not talking about just in India or whatever, but globally, most of the great TV that people are talking about are sitcoms. This is something I have realized. Like with the exception of a show like maybe Star Trek or Twilight Zone, or two random shows. X-Files was again 90s. I'm talking about 70s. I'm talking about say 80s, 80s. If you think about all the great shows that people were watching in the 80s, it was mostly the sitcoms that people still talk about, to date. People are not talking about the other shows as much, like the drama shows and outside of the soaps. So that's what I meant when I said it would compare, with what was happening in the US at least.
So Vineet, what do you think? What sort of went down where we sort of went from a position of fairly goodish, decentish content to something that, for the lack of a better word, is quite garbage?
I think there are like different points at which it sort of trailed off, right?
Okay.
And it's a very complex sort of question because, TV is not just a pipe that puts entertainment in your house, right? TV has cultural significance. TV is important from what it represents, right? Aaj bhi agar aap TV pe ho, it's considered to be more important than agar aap digital pe ho, right? In a certain, especially for audiences at large, right?
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of things that have, and there are very different forces. They may not be entirely related also, right? But they're joint at economics. The first and foremost is TV consumption in India, the viewer subscription rates are highly regulated, right? What's your best guess on how much you pay for a channel like maybe Star World for a month?
8 rupees, 10 rupees.
Yeah, max, right? And what do you pay for Netflix?
Yeah.
700.
Right? So you're paying 100 times more and for multiple channels on digital compared to what you end up paying on TV, right? And that's the biggest problem. There is no sort of healthy subscription push that is where the consumer is saying, okay, I am rewarding this content and I'm not rewarding this content. आपको जो चैनल अच्छा कंटेंट बना रहा है वो भी आपको 11-12 रुपए में मिल रहा है, जो चैनल सड़ा कंटेंट बना रहा है वो भी आपको 11-12 रुपए में मिल रहा है. Now there is no sort of market feedback saying यार consumer ने बोला ये channel long term में अच्छा है, ये show long term में अच्छा है. Where there is the biggest problem, right? So without that coming through, nobody knows what the consumer actually likes, what they don't like. TRP is a very sad metric. Very genuinely sad metric. What is TRP? TRP is like you got a captive guy, right? आपके पास एक captive है, आपने उसको चीजें दिखाई बार-बार और आपने बोला उसको ये देखना पसंद है. Captive है ना बंदा, उसके पास तो कोई choice नहीं है. Right? Now that choice is emerging, digital etc. is happening, but that guy is a captive. So he's got a TV in his house. He's got that.
Also, to be fair, the TRPs are consistently mired in controversies for if they're accurate or not.
I mean, sure. See, I'm from the industry, so I know that the industry takes ratings and the neutrality and its fairness very seriously, and they've made massive strides past couple of years. Bark and the other guys, Hotstar is doing some phenomenal work for trying to bring more digital measurement there. But that aside, fundamental problems, according to me, on why it's so shitty. And again, it's worth noting that when we say it's shitty, we're talking about daily soaps. Right? We're not talking about weekly soaps. Even today, if you have something that goes out weekly, it's slightly better quality storytelling, right? But the task of daily soaps and telling the story daily, right? There, your objective is completely different. It again points to two things to me, right? यार, कौन लिखेगा ये? रोज बताने वाली कहानी. Who's going to write this, right? Imagine making 250 episodes of anything in a year. Nobody's life is that interesting. Like, who's got that story? Who's got those stories now? Right? That's the first thing. And beyond that, I mean, the job for soaps, and especially these daily soaps, the format, which is so problematic, right? I mean, while its job is to keep bringing people back, right? The idea is not to tell a story and say, tak liya, aapne kahani dekh li. Movies mein kya hota hai, right? People come to watch a movie, they will stay. If they like the movie, they will stay past the interval. If they don't like the movie, they leave, right? But package, finished, done, right? On TV, the job is come back every day, keep watching, and which is where you have all of those zoom cuts, right? Now, we're saying all of this, but I think the most important thing that we're saying right at the beginning of our conversation is that none of us are the target audience for this. Right? And I don't even mean that from a sort of socio-economical classification perspective. I have honestly seen women look at Nagin and feel empowered, right? Feel like that is their story. Or I have, growing up, when I used to be a massive fan of Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, at that time, right? Women would see Tulsi Virani, right? Growing up in that show, Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, and that's empowerment for them, right? So where we stand as critics or purveyors of culture at large or public intellectuals or whatever, we're definitely not the intended target audience, right? So obviously all our judgment should come with that sort of pinch of salt disclaimer in there.
No, that completely applies here.
Yeah, but that said, I think the biggest challenge in why it's so terrible is that it is completely, I mean, the TRI has got channels by the balls. It's like, 9 रुपए में क्या मिलता है? कुछ cigarette नहीं मिलती है 9 रुपए.
Yeah, so just to be clear for the audience, TRI has a restriction on the amount you can charge for a channel, right?
Absolutely. There are very complex rules about what kind of bundles can be made available, what is a premium channel, what is a free-to-air channel, how much you can charge. So it's a complicated sort of set of rules that they have, and it gets updated I mean, these days it gets updated fairly frequently. There are some new channels that are getting auctioned off, new spectrum that just went off a few months ago. So, but yeah, I mean, there's no significant change in that number, right? 11 rupees or a 19 rupees monthly subscription fee is not sufficient, and which is where the advertiser comes in, right? That's what the advertiser wants. Keep making a show, keep bringing people back, keep telling them the same old shit, and they'll lap it up, man. So,
okay, quick question. When we talk about Indian television, right? You were saying about the daily soaps and the weekly soaps are better and this and that and whatever. How did it come to a point when daytime TV, what is daytime TV in most countries, like these kind of soap operas and that kind of production or that kind of storytelling, how did global daytime TV become our nighttime TV or our primetime TV?
Well, it's a very interesting way of putting it. I think that, according to me, and I'm not saying that this is an exhaustive set of things, but there are two things at play, right? Number one, actually, there's just one thing at play, but two different manifestations. It's a story of scale, right? You have to, but before we go further, you have to realize that TV in India is not very old. Right? I mean, mass consumption of TV really started in the 80s, 70s and 80s. We started having private TV only in the 90s, right? I mean, now we have, 900 channels and everything. But it's still fairly new, right? Now, within that, there is always the charge for scale. And you need scale in two ways. Number one, you need scale for advertisers, right? Advertisers need to see your channel up there, your show being seen by millions of people, etc. And the second is your ability to create at scale as well, right? So you're trying to serve the twin masters of scale, one by kind of pandering to the lowest common denominator of storytelling. I'm not saying lowest common denominator of audience, but the lowest common denominator of storytelling. Which is, यार हम एक दिन में आज 2 page script ही करेंगे. Right? 2 pages of script is worth maybe 3-4 minutes of content. But how do you stretch it out to fill 12 minutes of a segment? Right? That scale.
A quick interruption, but I just remembered something over here. Some time ago, I was doing this show with Zakir Khan was one of the writers. And before he was doing our show, he used to also write scripts for daily soaps, in Hindi. And he was telling me about the process that they used to follow. He used to live in Delhi and Indore at that time. And he would be like, I would get the day's briefing for that day's script as a text, as an SMS. Okay, in the sense that today so-and-so will say this, and then this person will say this, and this person will react. That is the premise of this 21-minute show. Now pad it. Okay, the whole show is in 3 lines, basically as a text every day. That's what he would get.
I will give you an example. I remember I saw this because I remember I was at a doctor's waiting room ages ago, and these channels was on. So and I saw the whole 30-minute episode because I was sitting there, I had nothing else to do, and network there also. This was the whole episode. Family is sitting at the table. Everyone there looks tense for some reason. Suddenly the bell rings, and then there are close-ups of everyone. Why did the bell ring at dinner time? Why did the bell kyun baji? Bell kyun baji? Bell baji? Kisne bajai? Bell kyun baji? On for 3 minutes. Then someone gets up, and then even the getting up, the shot is all stylized. And he's getting up, he's walking, and then he gets to the door, and there's a Domino's guy outside, and he's like, pizza, kisne mangaya pizza? Then 3 minutes of kisne mangaya pizza, kisne mangaya pizza, kisne mangaya pizza. And the mother of the house is like, मैंने तो खाना बनाया था, किसने मंगाया pizza? And then the older son, who's apparently pissed off at his mother, is like, मैंने मंगाया था pizza, क्योंकि मैं आपके हाथ का बना हुआ खाना नहीं खाने वाला.
And that's how the show ends. No, on this tremendous cliffhanger.
How did they make up again? Did she share the pizza?
I didn't see the next episode. I was like, I wish I'd seen the next episode.
It's symptomatic, right? It's how when your job is to keep bringing people back, right? The job is not to tell a good story. It's not about a beginning, middle, end. It's not about non-linear. It's about plot be damned, right? मुझे कल person को वापस लेके आना है. And I'll tell you what, the techniques that you're talking about, Tushar, those are time-honored techniques that Indian audiences have loved. right? I mean, Ekta Kapoor is not a legend because, well, she's a legend for a million reasons. She's a legend, right? But one of those technical reasons is her understanding of this psyche, right? That हमारी जनता के दिमाग में उनके लाइफ की मूवी चल रही है और उनके लाइफ के मूवी के स्पेशल इफेक्ट्स वही हैं जो आपको एकता कपूर के सीरीज में दिखते हैं. वो एग्जैक्टली उसका द कॉन्ग्रुएंसी ऑफ हाउ वेल शी इज अंडरस्टूड दैट ऑडियंस एंड ब्रॉट इट आउट टेक्निकली इज जस्ट ब्यूटीफुल. Right. Again, obviously, there is a limit to too much of a good thing, of course, and all of that. I'm not saying that her usage is the best and Mr. Scorsese.
But hers is the one that's been most successful, I guess.
Yeah.
And has pretty much defined the genre.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I think we've lost a lot. I think as audiences who've become more digital first now, right? And when I talk about urban guys talking about TV on the podcast somewhere, we've tuned out, which means a lot of the good stuff we've lost, right? So there used to be procedural shows that would happen. Sanjeevani, I think there was a hospital related show as well. There's been some good shows, man. There was this show about this lawyer guy that my dad used to really like for a while.
The one with Ronit Roy, no?
I think it was the one with Ronit Roy or someone.
Or something,
yeah, something like that. So there have been good shows, right? But what you will see is that most good shows have a cadence of a weekly release. Right? And a week 22 minutes or a week 44 minutes is still doable as a creative output. It feels like justified. There's a format, a flow to it, right?
Yeah.
The daily soap में नहीं हो सकता यार. आप daily joke लिख सकते हो. अब daily soap, well, it's a very difficult thing to perform. And you're seeing the challenge there come through with other forms of daily media as well, right? You look at the state news this year.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, to me, that's a very hard signal that, hey, the moment you're trying to fill up time, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Plot be damned, news be damned.
Also, why do you think that, are we in this cycle with a lot of this content where we've jumped into this place where we've set a certain format that's working, that's people are cool with. Now, we can't seem to experiment. Like, there is a lot of good content in the weekly stuff that does come around. But again, that also has a fairly limited shelf life. Like, they last for 1-2 seasons and most of them don't come back. Maybe like a Sanjeevani may be an exception because I think it went for a couple of seasons. But like every time we've experimented on TV, is it like a chicken and egg situation where we try to experiment, but we've created a system where experiment is not appreciated. And also, we don't give that experiment because of whatever, commercial reasons or whatever. We don't give that experiment enough of a chance. Like the YRF shows. The YRF shows are a good example where you had people raving for stuff like Powder and everything else. But they didn't.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think there's several forces at play, and I wouldn't paint it in one brush and say we don't give experiments enough chance, right? I mean, there's a fantastic people at Star and Sony and Colors who are day in and day out turning powerful scripts into good shows, right? I'll tell you, there's a show called Behad that is symptomatic. I keep forgetting its name. I wrote it down. You'll see Jennifer Winget. She's in a different role. It's a entirely different show, right? So I wouldn't say that it's not that we don't give experiments their due, but I think the patience that we have with new shows and new formats is very low, right? And I think that points to bad creative planning. And just again, in a way to say that the industry is still young and figuring out how to get good creative processes in place, right? You compare this to a writer's room in the US, right? You'll have a couple of Ivy League guys. You'll have someone who's run network TV for 15 years, who's heading the writer's room or something like that, right? Here, you don't have that. You have young people given a 3 sentence brief, and they're going to turn it around and create it, right? So the challenge is that if you plan creative better, if you plan for a season, right? And I've heard this feedback from a lot of viewers about a lot of content in India, is that पहला 4 episode अच्छा था, 10 episode की web series में पहला 4 episode अच्छा था, last का 2 episode अच्छा था, बीच में क्या हुआ पता नहीं, right? या टीवी शो देखा, यार पहला 10-12 episode बहुत अच्छा लगा, पर actually तो 40 episode का season है और उसके बाद where the plot went, who knows? Right? So I think it's a matter of how carefully we treat our creative product, right? So the lack is that we don't have prestige TV anymore in India. Right? Again, you don't have to go too far back. The Saas, the Banegi Apni Baat, the Shanti, and again, we can only talk about Hindi language stuff because again, I haven't consumed TV in any of the other sort of 30,000 languages that it gets made in. So you don't have to go that far. But the challenge is that there's just I don't think there's going to be a business case for it anymore very soon, right? You look at the top 20 shows, man, and all very, very little new path-breaking original programming in the top shows, right? First 2 shows are Kumkum Bhagya, Kundli Bhagya, right? Top 10 shows में आपको मिलेंगे 3-4 mythology shows जिसमें same rehash propaganda चल रहा है. Again, it works because it's made in CG, right? They don't need sets. So छोटा सा set बनाया CG में कर लिया निकल गया, right? So it is a complete race to the bottom economics game where we're just not in a position to make a choice one way or another क्योंकि consumer हमारा चला रहा है सब कुछ. So as long as people keep tuning in, it's all.
So until it literally crashes, there is no hope for new content on TV.
No, I think it's.
Or at least a sustained level.
No, I'm going to try and say something which, and I'm going to hope it makes sense to you. But our news problem is a problem of our TV being terrible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If our Janta had good, decent stories that reflected real problems. Right? Okay. David Foster Wallace wrote this massive essay called E Unibus Plurum about the impact of television on American society and culture and all of that. Now, in which he talks about TV was supposed to be, or cultural programming was supposed to be a reflection of society. Right? It was supposed to be a reflection of society pointing to a certain problem. Right? When you see Wagli Ke Duniya, you see 90s and the middle class in it. When you see Dekh Bhai Thi, you see 90s and the joint family in it. Right? We've lost that content being a reflection of something. Right? Now it's a caricature of something.
Yeah.
Right? Shriman Shrimati is not how my building looks like. Right? Or what's that other? Tarak Mehta ka Ulta Chashma. No, you're trying to reduce multiculturalism, right, into a palatable story. And that's where we're losing so much. And that's why, I mean, Janta is like, fuck this, humko to ye news mein milta hai, hame nahi dekha. So anyway, that's my bigger grouse with TV, man. That it doesn't reflect anything. It doesn't point to anything, right?
The relatability is gone to a extent for a large section of the population.
It's just going on and it's going on. So for the people who it's relatable to, for the people who it's portraying on TV, it still works, right? So and that's where you still have a large number of people tuning in to watch your Nagins and Kumkum Bhagyas of world. But yeah, man, I think it is not all bad. I mean, we can dissect it forever because it's entertainment, right? And we tend to overestimate the impact of content on culture when it's the other way around mostly. Like अगर हम टीवी पे फेमिनिज्म दिखाएंगे तो सारी दुनिया ज्यादा फेमिनिस्ट हो जाएगी, ऐसा नहीं है. आपको
obviously
किसी को पढ़ाना पड़ेगा, समझाना पड़ेगा, बैठ के बात करनी. But yeah, man, that's what I think is our big challenge, right? How do you make all of this sort of work with each other in TV and where it's economically not viable? But
different layers need to fall in place together.
Right? Yeah.
See, I have one more question / observation. Okay, so I've worked on one TV show that was on a national, general entertainment channel. Okay, it was on Star Plus, and so we were doing. So I used to be the showrunner for this show called On Air with AIB, which is a news comedy show, right? So because I was the showrunner, we had a lot of meetings with these people at Star. Right. And it was a Hotstar commissioned show, but they also wanted the show to be on Star Plus as well because it was a Hindi show. So, there's one thing I kept feeling was that the people who were at the channel, the digital people, right, they really took their audience very seriously. But I did not necessarily get that vibe from the people from the Hindi television channel. In the sense that I definitely got the feeling that they took their audience a little for granted. There was this sense that, dumb this down. okay, because our audience will not get this, or dumb this down, or don't show it like this, show it like that. And I remember one meeting, there was this one chap from, I think, the sales team, and he told me that, this is all fine and all, but think of it from this perspective. There's some guy in a banyan watching it on a 14-inch TV. So think of him also. And I thought at that time it was a little condescending, towards an audience. Is this just a personal anecdote, or do you think this is a little widespread? Because, okay, before that, I used to be at news television, and I've heard similar things from people, from creators over there also. I mean, we're calling them creators now, but producers or whatever. Back then, ki yaar, no one understands this thing, no one gonna get it. You just have to show all these flash cuts and this and that and all, and that's what they like. Do you think there's a bit of that as well?
I think there's a lot of that, right? Inadvertently, television is a medium of control.
Okay.
Right. Television is like, the idea with TV is to keep you there. Right. The idea with the engagement, like I said, the engagement with TV is almost never ending. That's the way that it's positioned in your house also, right? What time slot did you have on air with AIB? 8 p.m., right? I think it was.
No. It was 10 p.m. on 10 p.m.
10 p.m. Okay, that's still like sort of fag end of prime time therapy. Right? I think you would get a lot more freedom if you were trying to go for an 11:30, 12 o'clock slot, where everybody would be like, you already have a filter of who's tuning in. I think the important thing to note is that, for them, for a TV channel, right, that consumer tuning in and staying there is the most important thing, right? It does not matter if he feels that experience was rewarding beyond the fact that he just chose to be there. He doesn't have to go out and say, what a great show I saw tonight, right? And that's table stakes for TV, right? Which is where we're like, slow it down, dumb it down. We don't need it, right? Again, there are people who are fighting all of this. There are people who are not with that. And see, it's a matter of how committed you are to a creative project, right? So again, I would refrain from painting it with the broad stroke and say that everybody is like that and our industry hi aisi hai. While it might seem like that, there are ways of circumventing this, but you have people in power who want simpler, easier, dumb it down, and it happens everywhere, man. I think it's and it often it's fair. Yeah, often it's justified also. I wouldn't say that हर बार ये होता है कि जो बोल रहा है simplify करने वो गलत है. But too much of that thing also leads to really like bland shit. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this show called Bhabhi Ji Ghar Pe Hai.
No, I haven't.
It's of it.
Right. So Bhabhi Ji Ghar Pe Hai is this. If you really look at it from a non-biased lens, right, it's the story of two upper middle class couples who live in a society. Both of the husbands line maro on each other's wives.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, and that's the premise. That's the whole premise of the show. Right?
Okay.
And these ladies know that these guys are good for nothing. They are also in on the joke. They also take them for a ride all the time. When you really look at it, it's an empowering, fun show. Does it have problematic elements? Yes, it does. Does it have really dumb plots? Yes, it does. But in pure representation terms, जिसको वो story बताई जा रही है, उसको मजा आ रहा है देखने में. So who am I to stand up and say, no, your idea of fun is not highbrow enough for me? I mean, that's how I kind of made my peace with it.
Well, I think the issue isn't with the shows like this. I think the issue is with just not having this diversity of shows.
Absolutely. I think that is the thing that's
what you also, I think, mentioned with that initial part.
Yeah, man.
Wow. But let's move on to happier things now.
Yeah.
Our ray of hope, our ray of sunshine, everything that we've sort of...
Okay, one quick. Okay, before we move to the next topic, one question. Okay, so you mentioned those YRF shows, right? That were, I think they were in the late 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, 2010, 11 or something like that. And I remember
2011, I think, as far as
20, and there was a slew of shows, right? There were like a whole roster.
5 days a week.
5 days a week, and they were high quality shows. And I remember back then, people, like especially in the industry, were really excited about the fact that they were using red cameras, and they were using dollies, and they were using single camera, multiple sets, and so on and so forth. they were kind of like a show like a Powder could be like a precursor to Sacred Games or Patal Lok, right? Did that show come too early? Was that show too early? Because those shows kind of sank. They didn't go anywhere. I think they did one season a piece and then they vanished. Did they come too early? Was the audience not? I don't know. Why did they fail? Because they were good shows. I remember watching Powder. It was a really good show.
Yeah, I don't think I wouldn't say Powder failed, right? And again, I'm not the right guy to tell you what happened specifically with Powder, but I don't think it came too early either, right? I think this is around the same time where a lot of the shows were getting it, right? Bring On the Night was happening. Permanent Roommates is 13, 14 as well. So just around that time, the industry was turning a corner, right? There were people making a lot of effort to try and create digital content which was story driven.
But Powder and all was on terrestrial TV. It was on cable TV. It was on Setmax, I think. No, right. Sony.
But I think they created it for a limited run, right? I don't think they had, and the idea was not to create a massive 400 episode 2-year project. I think their idea was also much more. It had what? 11 episodes, 12 episodes. How much did Powder have?
Something like that, yeah.
That's all I remember. I don't know if it's the number of episodes.
Yeah, let me quickly check. No, 1 second.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We do live fact checks on this podcast.
Yes, we do, because being wrong is worse than anything else. 26 episodes, right? So that's a single season run. So
yeah,
that's my sense, right? I think it's hard to do catch up, right? With these projects, they do have limited appeal, so to speak, right? I think one of my realizations is that the stuff that you love critically, the stuff that's most well made, will often take years to become popular and mainstream in a way, right? I don't know if you guys have seen a show called The Wire.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So, I mean, I've loved The Wire for what, 10, 12 years, since the day I found out that this show exists. And even today, you find people come up to you and say, hey, what's the best show in the world? And I'm like, yeah, tell me. And they say Friends. And I'm like, no.
Who are these people?
Right. So that's the thing, right? I think the way we consume content now is also a time capsule in itself, right? The time I binged watched Secret Games, it takes people time to understand and appreciate certain cult classics, right? So I won't hold it against Powder for not making a dent at that time and for making like a late decade revival for Powder, but I wouldn't call it failed, to be honest. I'd say, and neither would I say it's ahead of its time. I think there are a bunch of shows that were really on the cutting edge. We have regressed from the mean. So I would say Powder at that time would have been par for the course. Maybe they didn't do a good job of marketing it well, because it has a great show, right? A lovely killer show.
Yeah.
Great performances. So yeah, man. So I don't think it's ahead of its time. I think still an audience trying to figure out where they like watching, what they like watching. And yeah, a little bit of the dumbing it down for the common mean.
I think this also strikes us more because I think we had that before. The concept of the weekly good show, and then sort of it lost its way, and now obviously with digital and everything else, it's coming back again. But I think that's why it strikes us a little more, as in it sort of becomes more stark when we observe it. That's the only thing.
I think it, like I said, it takes good things take their own time, and they stand the test of time. I think that's the most important thing, right? Like the fact that we're talking about a show that was came out 10 years ago in 2020, saying, "Hey, why didn't we make more of this?"
Plus, it's a Netflix revival, so
it's a Netflix revival, absolutely.
So, which also brings us to the happy part of this podcast. Digital. What do you think has pushed this boom? Like, I'm sure there are like 50 reasons. If you had to sum up like 5, what would they be?
First and foremost, cheap data, man. Right? The cheapest data in the world, right? At the risk of bankrupting an entire industry, we have the cheapest data in the world, right? The first things first. I mean, cheap as data. The fact that people love video, man. Yeah. My God, like I think India more than anything is a video-loving country. Nothing can keep us from the kind of video that we want to watch. So that with low data costs, with the fact that cost of creation has gone down tremendously, right? So it's not that we put our hopes in Netflix, right? We put our hopes in digital video, and that includes OTT, that includes your terrestrial guys who are now going digital, that includes TikTok. I mean, you got content coming out of everywhere, man, at this point. And till the TikTok ban recently, India was a massive market for TikTok, right? So I think it is essentially a country that has so many languages to explore, to express itself in, has now the ability that has been put right in their pockets and in their palms. We've taken away the one last barrier that there was, expensive data. Said, go play, man. Do whatever you like. And I love it, man. I mean, the breadth of storytelling that we now have. And I mean, it's not just soaps or GEC that are seeing, revival. Have you seen Skulls and Roses?
Yes.
I did, yes.
And it's beautiful.
It's fucking amazing. We started watching. Actually, Tushar and me started watching this show at my place at 4 a.m. And we had another friend of ours with us. Who was it? Shax. Yeah. And we were drinking. We were like, yeah, because how else do you land up watching a beginning
sober?
Beginning to watch a show at 4 a.m. means that you have been drinking. And yeah, we started watching it in the first 15 minutes. I'm like, guys, what are we doing to ourselves? And then I was like, we were hooked, yeah. We kept
insane.
Yeah.
It's really well done. And again, it's scripted, right? The reality segments are scripted. The stunts are real.
And of course, the problematic parts aside, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Raghu Rajiv making content. But that's it. Hey guys, great job, Monozygotic. Please make more Skulls and Roses. I love you. But yeah, man. So I think the digital has given a new lease of life. People have been freed from the shackles of the 10 rupee subscription, right? So now Netflix can predict मेरा कितना revenue है साल का. Hence मेरा production budget ही है. Amazon Prime has is evolved new metrics such as cost per first stream and stuff to analyze how their content is doing. So with more data, with more, and I don't just mean like Ambani data, I mean just Netflix data as well, right? With more data science, with more efficiency in those processes, digital definitely has taken a few steps towards solving our problems. But, and it's an important but, right? Everybody will make what they want to make, right? That's the freedom. Right? So you have your Ullu originals, and I don't know if you guys know what Ullu originals is.
I did not till I found out about them very recently.
Yeah, so you have that set of content,
soft porn type of stuff, right?
Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? And again, it's the internet. Why do you need soft porn? There's real porn, right? I mean, so but people will make what they want to make, right? So I don't think digital is like a silver bullet, but will it solve the problem of prestige TV? Oh, absolutely, right? I think Sacred Games, for whatever the disappointment of season 2 was, is a great marker. The kind of shows that TVF has done in the past on digital are a great marker of storytelling. Stuff that, I mean, the kind of shows that are being created even on Prime from traditional media houses like what Excel is doing with Made in Heaven. So you know that great storytelling exists, and that was never in doubt, right? We are a country that releases whatever number of movies in a year, so it's never in doubt that we have the storytelling chops. But digital has opened that up and said, "Hey, here, go play."
So, and the good thing is, I mean, a lot of the traditional guys quickly did the transition. Like you had a Balaji jumping in,
absolutely
jumping in. But how much did having a lot of these independent guys like TVF, AIB, DICE, how much of that helped? Like in terms of creating very interesting content?
I think it helped in the recognition, right? Because TVF and AIB and DICE, for what it's worth, are all expressions of acceptance of a new type of content, right? And that expression is important to come from a younger generation, a generation that is going to be future money, right? I think that's what having these 2-3 a few more now successful entertainment consumer brands really help to do, right? Without that, it would be a little more sporadic. It gave, having a TVF, AIB, Photocopy, other guys, gave it a sense of a scene, of something bigger happening, right? Y Films, for that matter. Y Films was a big push towards that, right? When you have Yash coming out and saying, I'm going to start making web series, right? It's a big statement. It's the biggest studio in the country coming out and saying, hey, we're going to program for digital first. And here we are in 2020, where movies are now premiering on digital first. So, it's moving in the right direction, I think.
Do you think it's garnering the numbers as much as the hype makes it sound?
It's very hard to say. It's hard to say, yaar, because I've been on the digital marketing strategy buying side as well, and I know that numbers are, you can make numbers up, right? So I don't look at sheer traffic numbers that people report. I would much rather look at the kind of financials that they're reporting, because if you're a subscription business or an advertiser business, कहीं तो पैसा बन रहा होगा ना आपका, तो आप सब्सक्रिप्शन फर्ज कर सकते हो, आप नंबर फर्ज कर सकते हो, पर जब आपका ROC फाइलिंग आएगा उसमें तो कुछ कहीं पे एक लाइन आइटम आएगा ना. So I would look at that, right? And obviously that's not something that everybody might want to look at. So I look at buzz as a much clearer indicator of what's actually happening, right?
I think buzz can be manufactured.
Oh, absolutely. But buzz cannot be sustained, right? Then the quality of buzz cannot be manufactured forever, right? If you have a show जिसका सभी ने एकदम पेड रिव्यू लिख दिया, आपको पता चल जाता है. I don't know if you guys saw, it happened with a very recent game release, where the day the game released, everywhere, like Metacritic had like 98% positive reviews of the game. This was Last of Us Part 2. And you can tell that, hey man, this is not true. Right? Abhi to aaya game, itna jaldi thodi khatam ho sakta. If your gameplay time is 70 hours, how can you have reviews that are full on in one day? So again, you can tell, right? You can fudge. But you can't fudge interest. You can't fudge like Mirzapur mein jab chote ladke walk up to you and say, oh chacha, you can't fudge that. Right? So I look at it, try and look at it like that. You ask people what they're watching, they tell you what's truly interesting, your family tells you what they're watching, right? I think it's great for me, because I'm from Nagpur, half my family is Bengali, half is Gujarati, so I get a lot of different sort of news and feedback on what's interesting and what's not. So I look at it like that. But on the whole, are numbers happening? जितना लोग claim कर रहे हैं उससे 20% कम, हाँ बिल्कुल यार, बिल्कुल. मतलब
how well do you think the regional space is doing in this? Is it actually doing better?
It's growing faster, for sure. The rate of growth has picked up last few years. Lots of people have stepped in and started creating for those audiences specifically, right? A very interesting anecdote here, right? I don't know if you guys know this guy called Amit Badana.
Yeah.
YouTuber. Right. And you look at how he's a Jat, right? When you look at how Jats have been portrayed in mainstream culture. It's always either the henchman or the dumb guy. And here's the guy who portrays Jats as regular everyday people, right? And that, I think, is what is driving more and more consumption. You're getting to see authentic stories, not caricatures of people, right? And are there caricatures? Yes, for sure. But definitely a very deep market in regional vernacular native language content, so to speak.
It's a great decentralization of content.
Absolutely. कब तक यार ये मतलब ब्राह्मणिकल पेट्रियार्की में सब कॉलेज एजुकेटेड लोग करेंगे प्रोग्रामिंग डिसीजंस यार. If your audience is 50% OBC and Dalit, where are your OBC and Dalit programmers for content? So it will come from the heartland. It will come from where these people are. It's not going to happen from a Bombay. I think that's my take.
And where do you see the economics of this working out? How do you see it working out in the sense, are we creating models that are sustainable economically, that this will sustain? Because at least when I see digital news has failed completely. At least when it comes to a business model, whether it's subscription or ad, they're struggling. At least from whatever I know from my background in that area, they're struggling. What happens to this area, the entertainment side of it, the video side of it?
I mean, there are many different ways to look at it, but almost all answers point to one thing: it's subscription. There are some models in news as well where digital subscription is working, but it's not scaling. In India, News Laundry, Rocket News, bunch of those guys are doing what they're doing. It's hard to scale, right? For sure. I think the challenge is a little easier with content, slightly easier because news is super commodified, right? आपको जो news मैं Indian Express से बता रहा हूँ, आपको दैनिक भास्कर भी वही news दे रहा है, right? It's just the spin is different, but news is super commodified in that way. Content is not, right? And if we're able to build the networks and the infrastructure that you need for quality programming, right? That would be a super way to defend against consolidation, big media consolidation. Otherwise, that's the only solution, right? The only way to keep growing and making sure that you're reaching new people is by becoming part of a larger and larger group of media entities coming together, right? So unless some people figure out some local strongholds, and even in regional, it's very hard to do, especially in the big languages, right? Sun TV has their own sort of hold on the South languages. Asianet has its own sort of play there. In Bengal, the entrenched media networks are already there. So it is a difficult solution because it's not been done before at scale for digital. But it'll be an easier bridge because now that Hindi and English and a few other languages have done it, it will be easier. It happened the same way with TV as well, right? In the beginning you only had DD1, then you had DD Metro, and then you had the other channels. So it should happen as well. And eventually the Hindi pie will shrink, is my sense, right? Eventually you will see the English and the Hindi pies shrink a little bit, while a Bhojpuri of the Punjabi become more prominent even in the digital spaces, right? And that's what great democratized content should be, right? Because if you can sit at home, and if you can sit at home and watch the shitty season 3 of Narcos in fucking Mexican, I mean, it would be great to see a great Punjabi show go take mainstream national presence, right? And I'd love to see that. Love to see people watching a Punjabi show with Tamil subtitles. That would be something to watch, right?
Yeah, and there's no reason why it shouldn't, man. Everyone's been watching that. What's that other Spanish show that people have been watching during
Money Heist?
Money Heist. I haven't started it, but apparently it's very good, and no one cares about the fact.
Oh, it's good time pass. It's a very good time pass show.
You saw it, though, right?
Yeah, it's good time pass. Like it's not The Wire. It's not highbrow, but it's fun.
No, of course. No, I've just discovered the Game of Thrones equivalent in Turkish. There's a show called Dispensir Ertugrul. Ertugrul.
Oh yeah, I've heard it's famous.
Yeah, again, not highbrow or anything, but yeah, so it looks interesting, and I'll watch it. So, but again, I mean, the day we're able to do this for our Indian languages, I think would be a big day. I'm going to use this moment to plug an episode of my podcast where we talked about this with Rahul Sarangi, who's now heading some kind of content division at MX Player, and Chitra Subramaniam, who's a producer at Cross, which is a Korean Indian JV production house. And we talked about this a lot, right? Why is it that Turkish or Korean or Chinese is getting that exposure, but we're not? And it's this. I want to talk about one thing though before we celebrate the rise of digital so much, right? There is this one thing that Indian content programmers tend to do, which is remake shit all the time. And we've also done it for digital, right? We've remade like a Hostages, and they've remade a bunch of other things as well. And a very close friend of mine wrote the Indian adaptation for Hostages, so nothing against that show, but you see how we're also de-risking our programming calls there, right? The guy who decided to make Hostages said, okay, show worked in Israel, I'm going to make it here. Because chances are that similar cultural makeup, similar storytelling vibes. So we're trying to de-risk those things, right? So I think it's going to be a trend that we'll see happen a lot more, where we directly import ideas for digital because we have an audience that's open and experimental on that platform.
I actually have a slightly more optimistic view of that. I feel like we're still not I mean, we've had storytellers in this country for a long, long time. But I think because of what's happened over the last 30 years in terms of the kind of content we've produced, barring some small sections of Bollywood, barring some small sections of TV, which have produced fairly interesting, fresh, new kinds of perspectives, we're not trained. Like, so I also write a lot for digital shows, primarily in the non-fiction area. And you can walk into a writer's room often and you realize that we're not ready, in the sense where we're trying and we'll get there. I look at these as good practice. Like, I look at these as good practice for learning good storytelling, just putting it out there, adapting it to your Indian ethos. So yeah. As pessimistic as I've been throughout this whole podcast, this is my one point of optimism.
No, that makes complete sense, man. I remember reading very early in my life, sort of writing recommendations from Hunter S. Thompson. One of the things he said that he did when he was a young writer was literally write the entirety of Old Man and the Sea and For Whom the Bell Tolls and all of Hemingway, right? Because that was writing practice. You're trying to, I mean, see, that's the whole process of writing, right? I
guess it takes time also, like all the shows that, even the ones that we love, like, you know, the ones that, like we talked about The Wire, we talked about even the shows that are on Netflix right now and so on and so forth. They're all coming from places where people have been in those kind of rooms, right? Like the number of writers that The Sopranos spawned. You know, that one of the guys went and created Mad Men, one of the guys went and created Boardwalk, and so on and so forth. I don't know if we've had that here yet, you know, those kind of rooms or those kind of experiences for people to sit and really like stretch their legs creatively. Do you think we've had it? I don't think so.
Oh, no, I don't think we've had it at all. I'm going to say something that might just feel weird to a few of your listeners, but the second season of Sacred Games was written by a guy who became a writer in 2018 or 2019.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And I mean, full props to the guy, man. It takes a lot of courage to go out, put yourself out there. But to what Tushar said, he's not ready. No matter if Varun sir has his kahat uske sar pe hai, but he's not ready, dude. You need to live a little bit of life to write a show like that, right? That 70s show aapko likhna hai, bilkul likho yaar. You're ready. Yeah. You're ready for that, right? But it is a difficult thing. Again, goes back to the fact that prestige TV is still new in India, right? The people who made the Saas and the Shantis of the world are now sitting in CEO and CCO offices. So the new generation will take time. I want to ask you something though, Tushar, since you brought this up as well. How do you look at writing sketches as a writer, as someone who works in writers' rooms? And Joel, you tell me as well. How do you look at writing sketches or for YouTube? Look at it differently from writing for maybe TV or OTT. Like, what is the sort of perception within writers? How do you approach?
So writing, if the sketch is for your own channel, the sort of freedom that you enjoy, of course there is a financial limitation to what you're doing. But the freedom that you enjoy is definitely much more. And obviously, it also depends on your own experiences, in the sense like how capable you are of doing it, and what kind of a team that you have in place. Are three of you writing it, or is one person writing it? The thing that happens with OTT, and I'm seeing this as the big players are also sort of moving in, at least in my experience, is that we are not willing to give it time. Because I'll give you an example. Last year, I was asked to lead the writers' room for a sketch show for one of these OTT platforms. Not the ones that are super popular right now, but someone with a lot of legacy media. And we were brought into the room, and they're like, "Listen, we really want you to do this, and we want to do an SNL. एक तो ये standard है इधर का SNL type show करना है हमको. सबको SNL type show करना है, but nobody recognizes that SNL has 80 writers or 70. We set up a room of 5 people. We were asked to write 30. Not 30. Approximately 30 sketches in 45 days. That's impossible.
Insane.
You can't do it. So the problem is we're still not moving out of the TV mentality. 45 days में 30 sketches are not. Eventually, that didn't end up happening because they realized that this was not a thing that can be done. But the fact that you were initially willing to sort of greenlight a project with the idea that you can do 30, you can write, produce, and like sort of put it up and edit 30 sketches in 45 days. And these are 5-minute sketches each. So OTT, right now, unless you're, someone like if a Biswa or someone makes it, so he has a say where he can be like, guys, I will give you this in this much time, whatever. Then you still have some hope for like quality in terms of this thing. But right now, what's happening with a lot of places is that unless you're a name with an ability to push back, you're asked to come on these kinds of projects, which either don't get made or have massive quality issues. And TV though is a different thing. So I've even written for TV. So I wrote for the team that essentially went on to eventually make Kapil Sharma. So I wrote the show that they made before that. And they're also basic description, ye likhna hai, write the sketch. And then of course what ends up on TV was never what you wrote. Well, the biggest problem with Indian TV is the star will come and be like, ye line achhi hai, ye line mere ko chahiye. I'm like, but this doesn't belong to your character. But nahi, ye line badi achhi hai, to mere ko chahiye. So by the end of it, the sketch is something else only that doesn't make sense. So yeah, at least as a writer, at least in my experience, I faced this. I'm sure other people have had different kinds of experiences. So yeah, Joel?
I think it depends. A lot of it also depends. Like we keep coming back to the point that we are so young. Not we personally, but like this industry is so young. And like, what is the legacy of the people making the decisions? What is the legacy of the people who are writing? What is the legacy of, and I find like, for instance, there are a lot of the OTT channels, right? The legacy, the people they've come from somewhere and they've all come from television, right? They've come from terrestrial. I'm saying terrestrial television to different, cable TV. They've all come from cable TV. And they come with these mindsets or these these opinions that have been molded in cable TV and I've seen because even I've written a bunch of stuff for these people and was involved in a certain number of projects. There's a lot of cautiousness that comes from that's a legacy of regular TV, where you get the feeling that it's changed a little bit now, but at least the first bunch of shows, like local language shows, they were like regular shows but with swearing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They were just like the same old ideas, the same rehashed concepts, but with swearing and a little more skin.
Yeah.
It's just more explicit, basically, gratuitously explicit. The language, the costumes and so on and so forth. There wasn't that much of a difference. Do you think that that's going to hold us back?
No.
No?
No, man. I mean, I think these are the bells and whistles, no?
Teething troubles also, I guess. Yeah.
Sorry?
Teething troubles as well, I guess.
Yeah, they're testing waters. They're trying to figure out what works. There was a time, man, when you couldn't get to any content online without it having gali in it, right? Because people are like, bro, abhi main gali de sakta hai content mein. Matlab, tu beer hai, becoming tu beer hai, that's the entire thing. It's not tu beer hai. It doesn't stop there. It's tu beer hai, right? That's a moment, man. Right? And I think as long as it's authentic to the expression that the writer, the creator was going for, it fits as well. Right? And there's an entire army of kids who loves Bhuvan Bam for saying 6 banchos per minute. Right? And who am I to say? So I don't think it's going to hold us back. I think it's a new language that will emerge. Yeah, man. And I mean, for sure. I mean, I know it's very easy to be sanctimonious and say if the script demands it, it's okay. But it's okay, dude. You want to have a show where people are only saying galis, go do it. George Carlin did it like 30 years ago, man. Please go ahead and do it.
Oh yeah, you're preaching to the choir over here. But at least, yeah, we can. We've come to a point where we can be optimistic then about the future, which is not very often on our show.
We are very
because most of the time we're like, we're so guys.
I think that the truth is that we should not be optimistic, but we've just seen too many TV shows.
That is true. Not Indian ones.
Not Indian ones, yeah, man. No, but I'm truly optimistic here, honestly. the people who are making decisions.
Yeah. And also, to be fair, with all my whining aside, even with writers' rooms, if I compare them to writers' rooms from 3 years ago, there is definitely an evolution. There is definitely improvement. There is definitely more open-mindedness in what you can potentially do.
Yeah, a great indicator.
Man, did you guys watch Patal Lok?
Oh man,
I love Patal Lok.
What a tremendous show! That is one of my favorite shows. Forget, like, I'm not going to say Indian or just one of my favorite shows. Full stop.
Well, great show. The dumbest thing about it was when people said it's Hindu phobic, and this is how people evaluate content in India, right? They're saying it's Hindu phobic. Like, dude, your protagonist is a Hindu. How can it be Hindu? He's Hindu. He solves the case. He's Hindu. The hero is Hindu.
No, their logic is if you show anything that is wrong with the community, it's against it.
Man.
So that's an entirely different conversation. But
I want to get one thing in though. What gives me optimism is the fact that, like, for a country that didn't have a direct-to-video market, so to speak, we've done fairly well with direct-to-OTT movies now, right? So you've got really good stuff coming through, right? I don't know if you saw Bulbul or the bunch of other things that are coming out. I think there's a lot to learn from there as well. So our OTT is going to get stronger. We are finding new, interesting directors, new, interesting talents and voices. And a lot of it is being done by people who were in TV 10 years ago. Yeah, they've got their head above the water and they're like, it's paying off all my years of.
So before you, there are two things that I want to check with you. Sure. So with regards to like OTT platforms, will the business model eventually force it to feel some of the same pitfalls that TV sort of went through? Because if the subscription model doesn't fully work and you have to depend on ads and you have to depend on reach in the advertising sense, will we fall into those pitfalls?
No, I think there are entirely new pitfalls that will come. And I honestly believe that. I think the challenge of scale is important, right? Like, for example, if there's an Avri OTT platform tomorrow, right? After a point, it doesn't make sense to run an OTT platform because it's a daily cost. आप अगर शो बना रहे हो तो आपका कॉस्ट है प्रोडक्शन और मार्केटिंग, राइट? पर ओटीटी अगर आपको चलाना है तो आपका एक रोज का कॉस्ट है. अगर मुझे if I want to show Tushar and Joel something, it costs me data or bandwidth. Now either I recover that from them or I recover that from someone else, right? The telco pays me or someone else pays me or I pay something. I think that's the challenge. That production is easy. Right? If you have a good control on your budget, you've got a great story in place, production is easy. How will you distribute? How will the small little guy distribute is where it will come through, right? I think where this whole convergence narrative around media really takes us to is सब कुछ एक साथ है, right? तो आज जो आपको Netflix पे दिख रहा है वो किसी और मार्केट में आपको किसी और चीज पे दिखेगा, किसी और मार्केट में किसी और चीज पे दिखेगा, right? There will be certain shows that will be exclusive, and that's what Netflix is building, right? And if you see the current like trend as we speak right now, there's Umbrella Academy, there's Stranger Things, and there's one more show, 3 sort of prestige marquee shows that they're running at the same time. That will become the model. You'll have these marquee shows coming out that are exclusive to certain platforms, and then you'll have these sort of middle tier or classics and stuff like that will start getting distributed. So I would expect that that consolidation will eventually happen unless everybody is sort of able to figure out like a great subscription model, which is hard to do, right? The optimist in me will say that India is big enough for us to, if you build anything and put it in front of the right audience, it will sell. But it's hard to say that that's going to happen for every language. So I do see some consolidation happening. I do see certain businesses, even in the regional setups, folding into more legacy businesses. But all of that augurs well for storytellers, right? Because the conceptual model gets proven. कि अगर मैं अवधि original बनाऊं, and I don't know why Avdhi is stuck in my head. If I make an Avdhi original, there will be a market for it, right? And it won't be just Avdhi speaking people. I can put it on Hotstar, sell it to Hotstar, I can sell it to a Netflix and get that story out there. So that's how I see it playing out here. A lot of consolidation, but a lot of premium on great titles and great stories really coming out.
And also, with more sort of mainstream stars sort of joining the OTT bandwagon. Do you think it's good, it's bad, or do you think it's gonna also? I feel like it's gonna go into two spaces where you will have a lot of really interesting marquee shows, and also they will be making a lot of stuff that's more interesting than what they make in their film or their TV show, because digital allows them to do that. But do you think, will it, because this is the question we'd also asked our guests last time around, Janice Sequeira and Anirudh Gua. They'd come,
Hey,
they'd done
Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch.
This is a Mrs. Binge Watch. So do you think, A, this will happen, and do you also think we'll go into a space where it makes more sense for a platform to get an Akshay Kumar, spend 50 crores and see much higher returns in terms of subscription numbers and stuff like that, then make a Patal Lok which maybe costs you 4 crores, and I'm just arbitrarily making up numbers. I don't know any of the numbers.
Significantly more than 4 crores, I'm sure.
Sorry?
Significantly more than 4 crores.
Yeah, no, I'm just random. So 10 crores, and they're getting like an Akshay Kumar is getting them whatever 5 million subscriptions, and Patal Lok is getting them 5 lakhs. Do you think they will get to a point where they're like, it's not worth my while to invest in this small show? Why don't I just get X number of big shows every year? Because it gives me that massive bump. And if at some point they figure out the cost to subscription sort of ratio, which works for them. Do you think that would happen?
I think the way it works, Tushar, is that each title or each programming strategy choice has a certain impact on your business numbers, right? So it's not I don't think it'll ever be an either or big budget movie or big ticket web series. It'll always be an and, right? An Akshay Kumar movie is pulling in people that a Patal Lok audience, that a Patal Lok is helping keep on the platform. Right? Your movie is done. 3 घंटे में आपकी फिल्म खत्म. आपने दिया 800 रुपए महीने के. बाकी 29 दिन करोगे क्या? Right? So I think that's how programming mixes are working with OTT specifically. Big ticket movies are the bait, while are the appetizer, while this is the meal. Right? So that's how I would put it. And almost everybody has has started doing it like that, right? Especially with the whole COVID pandemic, direct to OTT sort of releases happening. Who was the first guy to get wind of this and be able to do it? Salman Bhai. He had the first Amazon Prime deal for all his movies.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Right, so that's what big ticket movies are doing, right? You're there to watch Andhadhun. You're not there to watch Toilet. Right? So, or you're there to watch Sacred Game. So you're there to watch something else. So what brings you versus what keeps you are different programming choices. Absolutely. It's a monster you have to keep feeding. Right? Which is what Netflix is figuring out, right? This whole one Game of Thrones in a year is not enough to sustain an OTT platform. You need 3 Game of Thrones in a year. You need 4 Game of Thrones in a year. Because that's where different audiences will come. Game of Thrones is a fucking unicorn, right? एक show जिसका इतना audience है कैसे हो सकता है? It's like almost never going to happen again, right? So yeah, man. I think that's how programming choices are working with OTTs.
There is hope.
There is definitely hope.
There is
definitely lots of hope. More now than ever before.
One final thing. How much do you think COVID has affected digital in terms of the way it was going and now the way it's going?
It's gotten a proper step jump, yeah. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything is just like what was accelerating at 2% suddenly accelerated at 20% and now is back accelerating at 6%. Right? So it's been massive for digital entertainment, digital businesses, gaming, everything, man. Things are up.
Adoption for sure.
Yeah. Things are up 25-30%. I don't know, it's not specific to entertainment, but Ludo King, my God, if there is a winner out of the pandemic, it is Gameshin and Ludo King, man. The kind of stuff that they've been able to pull off, the kind of numbers that they're seeing. And everybody else. Bundesliga numbers are up like 8x, man. It's insane. Who's watching Bundesliga in India? What's happening? Yeah.
The German Football League.
Yeah. It's like the same team has won it for 8 years running and still people are watching it.
So clearly there was one silver lining of COVID.
Yeah, and it's expected to continue because options are going to continue to be limited.
Yeah.
Production is getting back on track, but who knows when.
That's true. That makes sense. So I think this is a very good optimistic note to end on.
Absolutely.
For digital. And the fact that hopefully it'll continue the way it's continuing. It'll get more interesting, and writer's room will improve, as my grouse is.
Yeah, man. I mean, that is the thing that we were trying to do at TVF, man. Bring in a proper writer's room culture. It's kind of upsetting where that's been now, but hey, man.
I guess it's a process.
It's a process indeed.
With time,
it takes time. Yeah, it takes time.
So thanks, Vineet. That was awesome. I think we've learned a fair amount, and I think also we've let go of a lot of our own prejudices with whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm glad to share. Thank you for having me. It was just
basically, Vineet was just like, stop being such elitist assholes, guys.
No, man. I think it's a process that I've also worked through, man. And to be fair, the moment you realize that, hey, when I say TV is all bad, I'm talking about some of my friends who are working there.
Yeah.
That's when it really strikes you. Okay, let's just look at it more empathetically. It's a process, man.
Listen, that's not an issue. My friends work on a lot of bad shit. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, same. I was a news programming man. I have so many friends who work in that. I'm like, yo.
And worked for Arnab. He can get all the shit we give him.
Oh yeah, yeah. My sympathies for anybody who's worked for that guy.
But thanks so much. But I think it makes a huge difference when you're talking to someone who's actually seen all the data and who's seen all the been around all of the stuff.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, man. This was very helpful. And before we go, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out our other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And Vineet, what are your handles on Twitter and Instagram?
I am at Ashcharya on Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, lovely. And Joel, you are?
I'm Pereira Joel on Twitter and joel.pereira.esq on Instagram.
I'm Yon OK Please on Twitter and Tushar_Ravi on Instagram. And of course, if by this point you don't know our handles, then I don't know why I'm doing this podcast. But thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
How many times have you motivated yourself to improve your sleep, or lose weight, or be more productive? How many times have you failed? Hi, my name is Ashton Doctor. Tune into my show, The Habit Coach Podcast, where we focus on creating small, tiny habits to improve your life instead of those big, impossible tasks. So make listening to me a habit every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com or on your favorite podcasting app.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.